time. All right, let's get started, shall we? Now that you have found your seat, we're going to get started right now. All right, good evening. Thank you for coming. Very much appreciate your time and energy and effort. We've got a session going on, hopefully next door, for 9 through 14. So hopefully that's happening. There's pizza next door. Conkles, thank you all for coming. Good to see you. Thank you. So we are, hey, not for the grown-ups, just for the kiddos. Only coffee with the mayor, that's all that happens. So we are about an hour and 15-ish minutes is what our first one was, and about the same size crowd, give or take. So very much appreciate your energy and effort and time tonight. Hopefully you got your smartphone with you because you're going to need it because there's a lot of interactive voting and participation that way. So hopefully you have that with you tonight. Streaming in, awesome. So we started this process really in January with City Council, and David McNair will talk through some of that about what has gotten us to this point so far. So there's been a group meeting for about 3 months, kind of ticking things off as they're going through it. We started in council with an off-site retreat, really January 3rd or 4th, somewhere in there. So we are excited to have David McNair is with us. He's got his own firm, and we have used him for many things this year as we've kicked off. So David, I'm going to let you have it.
Great. I will ask if you want to do...
Sorry, I will. So I know you've already been accosted when you came in the front door with a magnet and a sticker. If you haven't signed up, this is the city's AI CityBot, if you will. That pushes out information. So if you haven't signed up, I don't know how many we have signed up at this point. Last time I heard it was a couple of hundred or so. So it's a really easy way to just keep up with information. There's a magnet outside when you walk out if you can't get the QR code to work from the screen. But it's an easy way to sign up for newsletters, text alerts, kind of whatever's going on around the city. It's just a real quick way to have it pushed to your smartphone.
That sounds great. Thank you. Well, good evening, and I'll just add my thank you to everybody taking the time to come out and participate with this. I find if you're going to be with us for about an hour and 15, we have allowed for an hour and a half if we so need that time so we can hang around for individual discussions afterwards. But with that, it's nice to know a little bit about, so who is this guy that's kind of taking us through the process? I will tell you again, we like to keep this very informal. That means if you are tired of sitting in these chairs, I am not a good sitter, I would be a squirmer. Feel free to stand up and walk about if you need something else to drink. I've already issued my complaint that the 9 through 14-year-olds apparently have pizza, and I'm sorry that you do not. But we want you to be as comfortable as you can through the process. Community engagement is something that we take very seriously. We do it for cities, townships, resorts, anything, even corporations that want stakeholder input. Great example, when Volvo first moved to town, we worked with the community 2 years before Volvo put a shovel in the dirt to find out what is the community perceiving Volvo's going to be doing here. What might there be in terms of noise pollution, light pollution, you name it. So anytime there's reasons to engage stakeholders, that's a lot of what we do. I like to use an online polling system for a very specific reason. Number one, it is a great way to make sure every single voice in the room is heard. Everything that you will be following with us tonight can be done by your texting through your phone. If you don't have that, or if that's awkward in any way, we do have note cards so that you can simply write down the question number and write down the answer that you would be giving, and we will collect those and supply into the database as well. There's open polling that we'll be using so that you can file anything you would say in conversation or put into a text. You may do that as well, and it will all be recorded into the reports. In open polling, even if it's not seen on the screen itself, in fact, it will be recorded in the database, and we publish all of that to be used for our records. So suffice to say, welcome. Glad to have you again. My name's David. Holler, I'll answer to about anything. We will have pockets as we walk through the various priorities that have been identified thus far for you to add comments and color to those with voice as well. So we'll just kind of start the process and walk through it. But again, our thanks for coming today. So when we think what has taken us to this point, as the mayor said, we started this process a good bit ago, and one of the first things we wanted to do was hear from City Council. So we held a retreat We walk through the community-wide survey that was done, and you have highlights of that on the handout that you have before you. I'm going to touch on that and allow any questions that I can add to something that may have stirred a question from looking at the highlights from that community survey. But that's a great way. When you get 750 responses, that is statistically valid. I use the term, that's our quantitative input. We statistically can say this is where the community is representing their concerns or priorities or compliments as well, all of which we received in the survey, which was really good to hear. What we like to do from there is sharing that and listening to what City Council saw as their priorities. We then formed a community task force, and there are 13 members on the community task force that you're going to hear a little bit about that group and how it's formed and what they're working on, and I'll share some thoughts from that as well. It's literally a process that will be lasting more than 6 months, so we're tremendously grateful to the volunteers that are serving their time on that as well. So when we look at that, I like to show this slide because this is the type of thing that can get generated from even the session we're doing today. One of the questions that we asked in this to the City Council was, what are the values that personally you use as your guidepost when you work on council? And the larger the word means the more people that use that word as a guidepost that they wanted. I find that very reassuring because I like to know that we're starting with a good platform of people with commonality of value systems for what we're looking for. There is no doubt I am a 37-year resident of the area. I absolutely love it. I've spent many a vacation and time on Isle of Palms. I'm actually a resident in Mount Pleasant. We feed the traffic to you. So I'm one of those cars coming across and one of those cars circling looking for parking. And I've been recipient of a parking ticket when I parked in the neighborhood area because I couldn't find anywhere else to park. And for 8 years, we could park there, and I didn't understand why we couldn't. So all those things, I've lived a lot of the life with you in joining where we are. But I love that, and just for time's sake today, we didn't do one for the room, but I'm always wanting to know, think if you were putting up, what top 3 words do you use as your guidepost? But we'll have some other fun. We'll play with polling today. We'll also just keep our hands together that the technology works solidly for us at all times. So I mentioned the Isle of Palms Enrichment Task Force. What I do is I submit a list of qualities that I look for in task force members. And I said, number one, I want people who are very involved in the community. I want people who can be a two-way voice minimally. So if somebody is representing, it's because they work within a sector or community of the island that we know they would be well informed, and we want them there not just sharing their personal views, but what are the views of the people that you help represent from that sector. We look for business involvement, we look for resident involvement, we look for Wild Dunes involvement versus other areas of the island. So we look geographically and demographically across to say, what's a good representation across the task force? I will share my bias that I think we have an unusually dedicated, committed, wonderful task force. There is no doubt they love this island. They have great interest in ensuring that we look at how do we enrich it to continue to operate in the way that all of us would like. That doesn't mean that we always agree or we would not have picked the right task force, right? We have different ideas and opinions we bring to the table. But with that, how did we get back to that slide? I must have hit a button. On the Enrichment Task Force, I've asked one of the representatives to just say a few words because what is it to hear me talk about them? I thought maybe one of the members who said they would be glad to talk about the task force as well, share a little bit about their experience on it. So Paige, if I can ask you to come up and just share a few of the thoughts you have with regards to it.
Thank you, David. Hello, I'm so glad to be here. This is a marvelous and delightful group. The task force represents, I'm Paige Grimble. I'm a full-time resident on Isle of Palms. This task force, I'm one of 13, and we represent full-time residents, part-time residents, and business owners, and some people who live on the island who are also business owners. So it's a large diversity in the group, personality-wise, but also what drives us. But I think what you will find, and what I found quickly, is that we all have a passion for the goodness of Isle of Palms. So that has been a really a positive thing for us to all end up in this room together and then be given this wonderful task. That task being that we have gotten the opportunity to listen to staff, city employees, the fire department. They've come and given us presentations on key community projects that are going on now, ongoing projects that have passed, have already finished up, projects that are upcoming, plans, lessons learned. We've learned a lot of things that I had no idea about, and I like to think I'm a little informed, but some things I had no idea about that were great. And so I'm delighted to say that it's one of those things that I was witness to the care and the commitment that our city has put not just into their everyday work life, but into our lives. And I felt like that was, hey, this is where I want to be. So I'm grateful for that. So what we've been given is the task to take this survey and the different subheadings that it's now been divided into, and we're learning all of these things, plus taking our own experiences for being residents on the island or whatever our position is, and bringing that together and having sessions where we have, what's the word I'm looking for, brain sessions. Yeah, brain writing, that was what it is. Where we kind of put our ideas together, and like you said, they're very diverse, very different, but also, again, we're looking to be the best we can be for Isle of Palm, so it really is very positive. So we take that, and eventually we'll gather all of this at the end of 6 months or so, and we'll put that and represent it to City Council. So I'm thrilled to be a part of it. I can't thank David enough. It's amazing. You're going to see quite the presentation this evening. The work that has gone into this, but also the smarts that it takes to bring something like this together and make sense of all these different pockets and then take all of us and hear us. That is real success. So I'm grateful to be a part of it, and I'm so grateful to see all of you tonight. So thank you so much. If you have any questions, I don't know if I'm an answer person, but I'd love to say hello. So thanks.
Great. Thank you, Paige. As Paige was talking, I can't help but relay a short story because it gives great insight to part of the process. I work with NASA down in Houston, and the very first time I walked into the doors, I was in this huge building at Johnson Space Center, and as you walk through the doors, engraved in an overhead granite piece, it says, "In God We Trust." And I don't know about you, but I personally love that just individually, but then I thought, wow, I'm really shocked too. I mean, here we are at NASA facility, and it says, "In God We Trust," until I walked a few steps more and realized in smaller print underneath it also engraved was, "But all others must bring data." And so I would say as a data junkie myself, I believe in that. What we're using is as much data as we can to drive decision making. I feel the best decisions come when you're better informed. So we've used the quantitative survey to do that, which you have the highlights in front of you. And then tonight we want to use what we call the qualitative. We want to hear behind the priorities identified in the quantitative, what's there and what's missing. If there was something that didn't surface through what we talked about today, we have the forum tonight to bring that out as well. So I'm going to run through this really quickly, but how many of you, if I may ask, you participated in the community-wide survey, which was an online survey that you took? Wonderful. That's a stronger representative than we had at the first session, so that's really good. So I'll use even less time to cover the information, and you have a handout in front of you. But 750 responders, it was very heavy in people with more than 20 years on the island, but some good, pretty good representation from other pockets. The one thing we did not have as much of that we pushed and pushed was to get more business representation on the island because we wanted to hear that diverse input as well. Part of a process, we originated the livability plan for the city of Charleston, and they were dealing with very many of the same issues: traffic, parking, tourism overload. We're losing the quality in the city. Residential areas are being impacted. So much of the same school of thought that you go through, but it's very important that there are a lot of businesses that their livelihood depends on some of that. So everything's a balance, and that's the difficult part. We don't want to see the pendulum swinging too far any direction. When we looked overall at the quality, I like to highlight here as you look through the results that are before you, from a data standpoint, when 80% of a statistical population says, "we think this," you can pretty much say that's the culture. That's the culture of the island. So when you think about what's the culture that we have built on the Isle of Palms, what you can say is very close to 80%, 76 say it's superb or very nice quality with a few key areas needing attention. One of the reasons, however, that we are so driven to follow through with the recommendations that will go to City Council is that second line. Well, 20% say, yeah, it's nice, but it's declining. You know, one data point's a data point, but a trend is a trend. And to feel people think it's declining says, well, we should have some action. Yes?
So, remind me, how many full-time residents live on the island?
4,200 full-time. Would that be adult residents, or does that include families, do you know? Everyone.
And there were 487 of those that responded to you. Out of those,
Well, 750 responders.
but 487
Oh.
were full-time.
We're full-time residents on the island, correct. And it's interesting, if you're doing like political polling, if you want to poll what's the attitude across the entire United States, a random sample of 450 will give you 95% statistical validity. Now, there's a lot of things we have to study in there, like is it really random and all these other kinds of things, but the tables of gaining input. The other thing that I really encourage is we're not doing accounting work here, even though it is a quantitative survey. We use it directionally. We're not looking to count things down to the penny or to the vote, but we are looking at, if you have 750 people saying, this is very important to us, we want to perk up and listen. It's like having 750 in this room tonight, and 76% of them are saying this. You want to listen to what they have to say. So the next is 82% say they're very pleased or generally pleased with safety. Excellent, because that's a non-compromising issue. 81% very pleased or generally pleased with ensuring the island's natural environment. And almost 80% very or generally pleased with high-quality facilities, social, recreational pursuits, volunteerism, etc. The safe place to live, when we drill down on that with a very specific question of, indicate your agreement with the following statement. I consider this a safe place to live. Look at that, almost virtually, I think there's like one disagreement statement, but 98.23% agreeing it's a safe place to live. There are a lot of places that would be so envious of you and be wanting to sit in this room for that. Very positive results for what we see traditionally in surveying. Emergency response at 87%, IOP appropriately proactive in ensuring we protect and improve our community, 75%. This is where, from a data standpoint, I begin to look for any what we call polarization, meaning we have answers at this end, but do we have a pocket at the other end? And our first cut line is anytime 25% are disagreeing with something, we take note of that. Even if there's strong agreement by 75%, if the other was a polar opposite and said a quarter of the people are disagreeing with that, we want to take note of that in our findings. So communications is something we talk a lot about. It's asked on virtually every community input that we do, and I would tell you, never does it receive very good comments. We find traditionally across the board, people prefer email, still is the preferred method of communicating, but that's ever changing societally, age demographics, so we're always exploring. One way of communicating is never enough. We have to multi-communicate to break through messages today. But we'll be talking about that as a committee or as a task force and as we work through City Council. So let's look at the lowlights for just a second. You know, I like to really stress, let's not run through too quickly the highlights, because that's what makes us who we are, but let's do focus on where we see we have real opportunity. 58% say definite room for improvement in managing traffic congestion in peak season. That's not a surprise to anybody. 44% attending parking for beachgoers. 36% say regulations for short-term rentals with the current ordinances. So if we looked at what were the items that came out the most from that 750 population of respondees, that's pretty much the points to be pointed to. So we have structured a lot of our conversations around that. When we asked about traffic management specifically, almost 60% said, I think we need a more creative approach. Like, I don't think we're doing all that we could do, which leads us toward how are we studying other communities that are facing these kinds of traffic issues? What are we modeling? What studies have we done? Have we used data to drive decision making? A whole lot of complexity lies beneath that. But you can't dismiss the perception is 60% are saying, I think we can do more. And I think we can be more innovative and more creative. So that's something that this task force of 13 can really drive into and say, what other communities should we be looking at? What are innovative, creative solutions we should be considering so that recommendations can help answer to some of the things highlighted? Property rentals, we have a good balance of rental property on the island, 71%. However, look at the next line, and that's why I've placed it in red. We need more attention to enforcement of current rental property rules, 70%. That's a jump out. That says if we didn't have that conversation as a community, if the task force didn't deal with that directly, looking at those kinds of issues, then we didn't listen very well to the input that we had. So this all shares with you a platform to guide some of the discussions and decision making ahead. Community engagement survey also said pressing issues for environmental were in this rank order. Stormwater management, then beach preservation, then water quality and septic tank issues, then reducing litter and sea level rise at 18%. I love things that are affirmation to what we already know because we're using data to affirm what our position may have been. I'm forever surprised at a few. I was surprised that sea level rise came in at 18% versus some of the other items in other near beach communities that we have been in. Sea level rise usually gets a much higher rating than that. So that was just interesting. This doesn't in any way say the task force does not see that as a priority. It just says this is the data we use to guide the task force conversations and decisions. I'm not expecting you in any way to read the small type. What I wanted you to read was the big number up there of 224. So what we asked on the survey was if there are things to celebrate and recognize about living on this island, what would you say? And about a third of the respondents had glowing comments. The number one in reading through really had to do with first responders on the island, safety, recreational facilities got really high notes. So there was a lot of wonderful feedback we could give to hardworking people who work every day wondering, is it appreciated what we're doing? They got a lot of good applause through the survey itself, so that was nice. So what I'd like to do is start moving us forward towards guiding some of your input on the key issues that you really came to talk to tonight. But before doing that, just any key question about the survey findings themselves before we move forward. That's just platform setting for discussion. Yes, sir.
Well, you seem to really emphasize them.
Yeah, I'll try and run these
I know
back
you're
and forth
recording
and
this.
be recorded.
You seem to be, you made a very strong point about data and using data. Are you talking about using data just from this or data, for instance, data and numbers that the city produces as well?
So the data is all data. It is city figures that we have. They've done pretty amazing jobs in different points of traffic studies, evaluating things here. So anytime we can use data, South Carolina Department of Transportation data. We also will use qualitative input like you have tonight. All the comments from the survey, the comments that you'll have tonight will all be recorded and put in. So it's not just that survey that's guiding it. Does that help? Great question to clarify. Yes, sir.
1 second.
Yep, thank you. That's right.
There was a category titled sea rise or height.
Yes.
Okay. How do you discriminate between coastal erosion
Right.
and sea rise? I mean, there's the solutions for the two are two different solutions.
Two completely. Good question. That's what all this does is start to give a very top-line look at things, and then where we typically say is, let's spend time on things people cared about the most, but it also doesn't mean we sweep the other under the rug, so to speak. So things like tonight's session are to get comments behind. So we even had those questions of the task force when they would say, okay, well, they're saying parking is bad. So what else did they say? Well, what they really said is parking's bad. It's up to us to figure out what have we done already to remediate the solutions, what are we doing, what are other communities doing, what creative ideas do we have. So this is about taking that next level of depth. So there was no delineation in the survey between beach erosion and sea level rise. So if you would join in with your phone systems, you'll get to play a little bit, and again, we'll just keep the technology is working. All you need to do here is have an ability to text. So you do not need to be online through web. As long as you could send a text message to a family member or friend saying, I'm in this meeting, don't bother me, then you can send a text message to me. So I'm going to give you the number to sign on for text. What I do want to assure you, this is an educational polling system. There is absolutely no marketing, no tracking, no follow-up you will receive whatsoever. It's used in higher education. So it's one of the reasons I like it very much. So that's just a screenshot of my phone. If you go to your text screen, up in the upper right-hand corner, at least on an iPhone, is a new text because you've not texted me before. So if you'll hit your new text feature. And then the number I would like you to put in the text at the top is 37607, the large number in red, 37607. That's my polling phone number, 37607. And then down in the actual text box, if you will enter the letters and words IOP Thrives, the key is do not allow it to put a space between P and Thrives. You do not need to capitalize. Capped or uncapped works as long as IOP Thrives, one word. And then you merely hit send button. Please do not push any other button when you get a response just to make sure you go to the right place. It typically takes a count of about 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and you should be getting some messages saying you have joined. So if I see your heads nod, that tells me that you're getting online. Good, number joined. Yes, Laura. Okay. Can I help you out? Desiree, do you mind helping out while I just continue with this first question? Oh, no, not contacts, but text. So you're in contacts versus text. So it would be just as if you're texting a friend. So all you have to do is see people got the hang of it. Just all you enter is the one letter, A, B, C, D, or E, that represents you the best: full-time resident, part-time resident, meaning 8 months or less, business owner, proprietor, both resident and business interest, or a visitor to the island. That's a good point, Linda. If there are some people who are here for a second time and you've already voted, you're not going to overall sway the system if you vote again, but I would request you've already put in your perspective once, no reason to do it a second time for integrity of the system. But I don't think overall it's going to sway the results too much with the few people that would be a repeat. All right, so you're even stronger than the first session and stronger than the survey in terms of number of full-time residents that are here, so we definitely like to take that into consideration. The screen for visitor to the island, the actual, if there is one or two here, we're just not seeing it on screen because we increased the font size for readability, but guaranteed it'll be captured and caught in the system. So here's an open question for you. When you describe this island to other people, maybe you have good friends visiting for the first time or people that have said, we're thinking of moving to the area, what would you tell us about it? What one word would you most often use? And I only want one word at a time, if it's, beautiful, or if it's congested, or if it's stinky. Whatever word you use, put the one word and hit send. And I'd like you to enter about 3 words, just one at a time. One word, send. If you have hyphenated words like really stinky, you can hyphenate it and it will read it as one word, so just hyphenate it and it will read it. Obviously, when the words get larger, that means multiple people have used it, so by size you can see the most often used words. Nice. As they're popping up on screen, I'll share that I think my first visit to Isle of Palms was 1977. So way before Wild Dunes and a lot of dirt roads and the little one-level motel that existed on the island. Boy, have we watched it all change. The one addition, if you've entered in 3 words, your last one on this one is, I'd like you to look at the screen. If there's a word up there you really agree with, but it wasn't one of your 3 words, enter that as your final word. Because I like to see where's their agreement on language. This isn't just about understanding that we all love our island. This helps with communications, using the very words that people love about this place. Just give it a couple more seconds and we'll move on to some other issues. Not a bad place that you all get to call home, at least 90% of you. So let's move on to parking and traffic. It was the number one thing talked about from the community survey was seasonal traffic and how are we handling it and what are we doing. I will say through the process, Paige referred to it, my eyes always get open when I sit in these sessions, and so what our task force does is we'll ask the staff to come in and present. What do you see as the biggest accomplishments? What things have worked? What are still the biggest challenges? What's vexing you? And it's really nice to hear from the staff, these are things we've done. And many times things come out, there are people like, wow, I had no idea we'd taken all of these proactive steps, because we don't see what may have happened if all of those steps never had taken place, right? We only get to see, well, is that enough or it's still not enough? But as we go to our poll and look at questions on traffic, and I always wait for the A, B, C, D to show up or it's not live. And every now and then it gets a little weak signal and we just want to bump it through. But I'm not seeing that one's wanting to freeze on us, so that's not going to be fun. Come on, tech, you were working so smoothly. It's just totally frozen on that one. I'm going to do a quick bump out of the slide deck, if you'll just pause with time. While I'm doing that, I'm going to bump out, although it's really frozen, it's not even allowing that. But what I think we can do is just still have some conversations about traffic, and I'll try to pull that back up. I may have to do a complete shutdown, which is really annoying. See what that does. But while we're looking at traffic and so forth, questions that you have, or if you were going to be talking to one of your neighbors about it, or you have this access directly to the task force to hear what you have to say about traffic, what might you bring up? Anyone, and we'll rush a microphone too. Desiree, can you help with the mic? And I'm going to play with this in just a second.
Yeah, so congestion, yes, I agree, but I think I'm more concerned about the management of traffic as it accumulates on the island. And also the people that are visiting our island, they don't know a lot of the customs here, like for instance, the crosswalks. We need better signage at those crosswalks. I've been witness to at least 3 incidents where we almost had a tragedy. So I'm more concerned about the traffic management.
Thank you. Very valid. I've watched people blow right through crosswalks when people are starting to take a step out. And if they've not been in a community where that is the manner, like a university often has those and so forth, they're just unfamiliar and they're thinking, I just want to get to the beach and get out there and enjoy the sun. So I'm going to skip that particular question because it's either going to freeze up on us or does not seem to be playing nice, and see if it'll come online with this next question. If polling doesn't work, you know what? It's very rare, but we have to revert to good old town hall style. This is such an important question. If I may ask, if you would take a note card, and if you just write on there traffic, and all you have to list for the first part by it is A, B, C, D. Do you feel traffic congestion, if you were going to answer your top concern, and I like to give you a chance to put your second concern as well. So this is just your top concern. What would you list it as being? Congestion on the IOP connector, traffic and congestion in the main roadways on the island would be B. C, traffic through residential neighborhoods, and D, something else. And if you have D, you can just write on the note card what you consider that to be. Do you have on your phone, do you have internet just to check, make sure that stayed with us? It's just so weird that it's not still connected. My phone shows it's still up. Yeah, why don't we? So what I'd like you to do while we're going to try to connect back is take that same question for your, and then I'll get to your answer, your second top priority. So you had number 1, and right beside it you can put A, B, C, or D. What's your second top priority? We'll collect those. Yes, a question you have?
This is my big issue now, but I'd like to do a quick poll in this place.
Yes.
2 lanes off the connector.
We'll have a chance to look at the connector in just a little bit, but it's a good thing. Yeah.
Permanent, and Mount Pleasant has to join in.
Yeah.
Going to this project. And the fact that the Mount Pleasant Council says it's a solution looking for a problem to me is insane, that they don't, I mean, you're from Mount Pleasant, how many times have you been stuck on here on a Saturday afternoon?
Yeah.
trying to get off the island?
Well, we're all stuck. And right now, this is why these issues are so very important, because Sullivan's Island is facing it, Isle of Palms is facing it, Mount Pleasant is facing it, the light congestion at Mount Pleasant where it hits 17 and the traffic on 17. And because it's a state highway with DOT, there's obviously a lot to walk through. Having a challenging issue is not something to shy away from. It's just what is the best solution that's going to allow something that's going to make a difference. So I can share with you, definitely looking at lane usage on the IOP connector is one of the things the task force is diving into to say, what does that take in terms of coordination with Mount Pleasant, with SCDOT? What are the realistic timeframes? How do we manage it in the interim? So these things get deep. There's no doubt about it. But it's clearly one of the top things to look at. Did you find any solutions? No. Was it connected to the internet? Isn't that strange? Okay. Well, we'll just keep using good old town hall format, which is sometimes just the most fun. So if you've recorded your second priority, we're going to go on to parking to start looking at some of that, and then we'll open it up for some other general comments with regards to traffic and parking. These would be A, B, C, D, E, or F. If you're looking at, with parking, what would be your top priority again? Is it, if you just write on your card, parking, and note A, it's redesign of current parking areas to maximize their use. B, long-term solutions to beach parking, possible low parking decks, and that's just an example. No one's advocating, it's just the type of thing that isn't here today that might be one of the solutions. Consider surge pricing for peak parking times, meaning residents not included in paying the surge pricing, but any visitor, not a resident, would be. Campaign to incentivize shuttles, biking, alternative beach access. The use of technology, better sensors and apps that give people parking updates so they're not wondering where parking is or crowding on the island. They have apps before they come here to tell them that. And then if you have other ideas, certainly write that down. I won't bias you by telling you, at least in the first session, what the number one answer is, but I'll tell you in just a bit. Since we can't see the polls up here for us, which really frustrates someone like me, but we'll get it. Anyone want to guess what you think the number one answer was, at least in the first session, or what may be the number one answer in this session? You named it, surge pricing. One of the top considerations, they'd really like some due diligence around that to see how it works. It's not always a great answer. I'm just sharing from other communities. Everything, a reaction has a reaction. Different people will try to beat the system, and they'll then start parking in neighborhoods and doing this and say it's worth paying the ticket pricing, so then we have to up ticket pricing, and on, all to say, for today, at least strong message, and with your collection of your cards will tell us whether that continues to be, from the full-time residents here, the strongest theme that is emerging, no doubt about it. The second most common answer, anybody have a guess? You can now record that right next to your parking answer for the first one. What letter A, B, C, D, or E would you give to your second item? We'll give a chance for people to record that, and then I'll play the guessing game again. What do you think might be? Mayor, you didn't see the first session results, did you? Oh, you did. Well, you can't answer. Rusty, have you seen any of the results? Yes.
Interesting comment.
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. That, interesting comment that, the technology and surge pricing could actually go together.
They absolutely
because
can.
in using tech, you could see where parking is available and how much it is, or however, if that's, anyway, not my idea.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Well, it could also be where it's not just surge pricing depending on time. If someone is wanting a spot that's closer to a beach access or closer to somewhere else, then it
Could be elevated
gives
pricing for
them-
that.
It gives them control of where they're a little bit more.
You know, many say Uber brought this thinking into every day when you realize that, oh, well, I want an Uber and it's 1 a.m. in the morning and everyone's wanting an Uber at 1 a.m. in the morning. Therefore, you pay surge pricing if you're going to get one. But you also know if I want a luxury car, this is the pricing I get for it. So technology is there, not that it's implemented overnight, but there are things that can be done that we can make better use of some of that. Yes, sir.
On your deck, I think there's a secondary advantage there. You know, when we have hurricanes,
Yeah,
people are looking for high ground to put their extra cars.
you're exactly right.
And this could be a location where they could use that. So there's a secondary benefit
You're
to
right.
some of these
I
considerations.
mean, there's no doubt the minute we hear deck with parking, it's a four-letter word in every sense. And so it's understanding where could it be, how's it placed, what level is it, might it help benefit situations like that. So again, not easy answers and not cheap answers, but they are things to be explored. Other comments before we leave parking and traffic that you'd love to just say, I came here because I really wanted to get this on the table with respect to, for now, parking and traffic.
I have one.
Yes, sir.
So recently, Waterway has become a major highway. I don't know if
Yes.
anybody knows that. But I think the problem is that right as you're coming off Palm on 21st, it turns into 2 lanes. So the merging off Waterway has nowhere to go until somebody's kind enough to
Yeah.
let them in. If we cut off that inside lane and let the traffic on Palm proceed
Flow
on-
through there.
on the inside lane, that way Waterway can continue to feed into our 2-lane after 21st. That would eliminate a lot of backup on Waterway.
Thank you. Yes.
Excuse me.
Yeah, we're going to bring the mics around. Thank you.
Oh, to your point, you were talking about traffic management. I think all of the options that you had up there are traffic, the lack of traffic
Right.
management, the connector, the neighborhoods, the roadways. It needs traffic management.
Yeah. So I think you've added to something I was thinking when the other comment was made. Most of these are not, is it this or this? It's this and this, correct? There's multiple solutions that have to be deployed, and we don't want to do it irresponsibly. So the times at which experts who come in and work with congestion in other areas and they know the pitfalls, well, if you do this, beware that you might have this surface, kind of guiding the process can be one of those really smart ways to go. But looking where resources are applied, because like everything, resources are limited. So we want to put the best resources in the best places to manage towards the enrichment and livability. Yes, Laura?
Hold on, Laura, I'm
Oh,
coming.
yeah, I'm sorry. I need to run out with the microphone where I'm closer.
I'll sit in the middle just so that I'm close.
I'm going to bring up something really, really radical and something that probably wouldn't be possible for a long time, but something to consider. I used to go down to Florida a lot, and I specifically went to Sanibel Island. Sanibel Island is connected by a causeway between Fort Myers and the island. There is a toll to go to the island, going to it. When you come back, there's no toll. Now, they have accommodated, they have a very large area where there's enough room for the cars to actually stop, pay the toll, and then get onto the causeway. Radical, but
Yeah. Well, look back, 60% said we need some
Hey.
creative solutions, right? So
There you go.
looking at other areas who face very similar situations, we're talking about just, it's population control. It's not just traffic control, parking control, it's population control. And having worked in a number of these communities where growth is a singular issue, that are top issues, never singular, what I would share with you is there's never the ability to turn a spigot off. That just doesn't happen. You don't say, well, let's stop advertising and they won't come. That just isn't going to happen. Word of mouth is the #1 representative, and every time somebody comes here and has one of those paradise experiences, they're going to be talking about it, and other people are probably going to come. So how that gets managed, that's actually not so radical. It ought to be considered in the buckets. Yes. Yes, Marianne. Yeah.
Building off of his point in regards to Waterway and some of the others, has there been any talk about doing an actual study where you put down, I don't know what the sensors are, just to count the numbers of cars, the speed, to see, if, I'm not denying that it's gotten faster on Waterway, but like what part of Waterway? What's it like, down by the resort since they moved the Wild Dunes entrance? And kind of to get a sense so that it's as opposed to just saying like we think we need something,
Right.
to know where actually we
need it.
Yeah.
So I'm going to use that question. Could everyone hear the question? Do we have actual data tracking on Waterway, basically? That's a perfect example of the guidance of this process, is when the task force gets together, they can go crazy and make recommendations and say, well, I think we need to reroute off a Waterway. Waterway's become... Somebody else is going to say, well, I don't want to make that too hastily. I think we need to see some data. So what might come out of the final recommendations from a task force would be, we would like to see data on what has been suggested to be the 3 hot spots on the island and get that tracking. I'll tell you, I've worked with South Carolina Department of Transportation, and I was absolutely blown away by the data that they track. I can tell you the 5 hot spots in the Charleston County region where we know exactly how many cars in what hour periods go through what places. So whether or not that's been done, that's the kind of question we usually kick to staff and say, do we have any data on that? Is that accessible? Is that something we want to commission or make a recommendation for? So it's a good, perfect example of the flow of kind of how recommendations come out of a task force. Yes, ma'am.
Do we have data on whether a police presence at those 2 intersections, both at the connector and at the bifurcation of Waterway and Palm Boulevard, what a difference a police officer standing there would make? We saw something awful on Saturday. A guy coming off Waterway, cut through to the 2nd lane and then cut back in to the connector.
Yes.
Yeah, I was kind of thinking along the same lines in terms of if anybody's ever attended a major sporting event or anything like that, and that's what we have every weekend, every Saturday and Sunday during the summer, especially during the holidays. And when you see that, you've got to, the areas around those stadiums or wherever the event is, they don't build their roads for those weekend events, but they manage it traffic-wise with police at the corner directing traffic and over whatever you call it, disregarding the lights and everything. But actually, I'd hate to see us spend so much money, even though it is a lot of weekends, but those surges, we just need to have a plan that includes Mount Pleasant to get people out of here and in here at the key times when there's peak times.
So I'd say the points being raised are excellent to hear, and it is affirmation. That's exactly the type of things that the task force is talking about. So they're looking at what does increased presence do to help control traffic? What have we already done? Because there have been moves in that direction already. It's not like nothing has been done in that. So does that need to increase? What does that mean in cost, and is it going to change the system? One thing about assisting traffic flow and assisting parking, what it usually does is it's a short-term fix, it's not a long-term fix. Because the minute that it flows easier, more people want to use it and brings more people to the island. So keep in mind what may feel like a short-term relief. It's like a little squish of Afrin in your nose. You can breathe for a little bit, which is great. Don't use it regularly. It's very harmful. So all to say, we have to be careful with recommendations, how deeply we go into them. So on this one, in Creative Solutions, we love just open comments, which you raise. I like when we can hear from everybody. I just don't see that this is connecting, which I just don't know why, but I don't think there's much of an opportunity. If you do have a creative solution, and the one thing I believe we have an ample supply is note cards, and you need an extra note card, please raise your hand. We'll get them to you. But if you have a solution you'd like to enter in, just please put creative solution at the top and write it down, and we will feed that in. So, jumping to another very important topic, environmental issues. I've said my own personal prayer that this one would all of a sudden connect, but it doesn't look like it wants to play nice. So we will do the same if you'll bear with me for the old school manner of getting feedback. What do you consider to be the top priority? Is it stormwater flooding, the routing of water? B, septic tank issues enforcement? C, education to residents regarding proactive items being handled, or other suggestions that you may have? If you'll just put with environmental, A, B, C, or D. And then I'd love to invite some open comments for thoughts. Now, keep in mind, on the statistical survey, stormwater got the number one answer. That doesn't mean the task force is only going to focus on the number one or number two. They're talking about all of these issues. Today's session is to give us further information about which ones really are the priorities. If resources get limited and you have to decide which one from a timing standpoint or from a monetary standpoint, where do we invest? Your input will help shape that in the recommendations. Yeah, I know. I'm just dying to get in here and play with the system. See if we can get that back up. It's so much handier when we see everyone's responses on the screen.
It's not the Wi-Fi.
No, I think we tried a hotspot and that didn't do it either. And
Yeah, Marion's got a good, strong signal, so I was trying to.
yeah, thanks. I thought I'd undo it and try to reboot it one more time just to see. So I'm on your hotspot right now, so that should be working. So it's not a Wi-Fi issue. Bump it up one more time. Usually takes about 10 seconds. So when it comes to some of the stormwater, septic tank issues, any comments that people would love to share this evening? We'll see in the final tallies if stormwater is still number one, but we know routing of water is a big issue on the island. Yes. Yes, Paige.
Go ahead.
I believe stormwater and septic should be combined because they all are related. So I think that, you've got stormwater and you've got septic, but we've got the same problem with everything. So.
Like many of these, there are interdependencies for sure. There are some very specific things with septic maintenance, how many septic tanks get in. There's a lot of septic-specific issues that maybe deserve some recommendations and enforcements and codes and a whole bunch of things. But yes, they definitely affect each other for sure. Paige, and then I'll go to Laura.
So I just wanted to put a plug in that we have on this island something called Adopt a Drain. And we can, as a community, adopt the drain next to us or next to our home. And there is a way that Desiree can explain for you to go on and adopt that drain and care for it and send in wonderful, like, oh, it's not looking good today, or whatever. And the city will get it, and it's amazing. And I had no idea that was even an option. And I think as a community, that's what we're here for, is for us all to get involved. So consider Adopt a Drain.
Education is really important, specific to both stormwater and septic. There are a lot of misconceptions that the community has that, the septic is, I'm not having a problem, so there isn't a problem. And we do not have any enforcement of inspections at this point. And I'm working with another committee specifically in this area because we really want to educate people. Part of the problem too is that a lot of people, when they have a home or they're purchasing a home, they don't necessarily even know where their drain field is. There's been no mapping of the drain fields. And with the combination of sea level rise and there's also sinkage going on. The island is sinking. And these drain fields are being compromised. So I really feel strongly about education, and it all wraps into also then working towards enforcement and getting people to understand about pumping out their septic systems. But I think education is one of the very key first steps that we have to take to help people understand what's really going on.
We tie education with They're so vitally important. And in the same way Paige mentioned that she would jump on the adopted drain in a heartbeat, she didn't know it existed. It's been there, it's very effective. I've shared that in other communities, those Adopt-A programs, typically where you have communities of care, you get really high participation in those, and they can be really effective. First, we have to know people know about them, right? So always looking at, okay, how can we take an issue like that and think more strategically about the communications that are taking place so people are aware of good solutions that may be out there already.
I'm coming.
That's where we need.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. But I really think that the sewer issue, if we could expand the sewer systems, the septic tank issue would go away.
Mm-hmm. And I would share, I think as you all ring the comments, it will reflect me back to some of the task force meetings we've had over the last 3 months. These very issues might be brought up, whether do we have data on this? Wouldn't it be helpful if we had enforcement officers handling traffic? What's beautiful is, Paige mentioned in the system, we'll have presentations come in from staff to respond. Let us share with you what we have done. That, again, a lot of people are unaware that a lot of those things have been put in place, and then we question and say, well, is that enough? Is it proving that it's being effective? Can we do even more? So you're really hitting right around issues, which I'm so glad so many of the task force members can be here, so they hear it's reinforcing the very discussions that they're having as well. Susan?
Thank you. I'm on the task force, and I've mentioned this in our conversations, but I do feel strongly that Isle of Palms should be a leader, an environmental leader, and that should also be part of our brand, our marketing brand, but that we actually have to do the work and do the things that make us truly a leader.
Yeah.
And that the city should be leading by example on things like energy issues, exploring the potential for solar panels, if they're appropriate on buildings, would be one example. Exploring them, not saying you have to do them. Leaf blowers, there's no way we can mandate that people don't do gas-powered leaf blowers, but the city can lead by example and switch over to, what do you call them? Electric.
Yeah.
Electric, battery-powered,
alternatives.
that don't pollute and cause the noise, pollute the air and the noise pollution that I think many people are concerned about. So
Yeah.
leading by example, not necessarily restricting, but leading by example.
Yeah. Perfect. So it's not just playing a catch-up game. Sometimes it's a leading game.
And good news, the city received a grant this year thanks to the Environmental Advisory Committee and their leadership to install solar panels on top of the Public Works workshop in their roof. So, we are trying. We appreciate all the help from that committee.
So safety, as we said, let's look at both sides of this. Number one, overwhelming response that people feel this is a very safe place to live. Safety is a strength on the island, but you can never let your guard down. There obviously have been incidents. So being non-compromising on safety is very important. This was an open question from the polling, so we'll throw it open to the group. What are things, if we're dealing with safety on the island, that most come to mind to you? There's some conversations people would love to start. Yes, sir. I'll go to you first, Thornton. I'm sorry? Coyotes. And that's in our livability with animal control for sure.
Coyotes.
Thank you.
Can we say that 3 times really clearly? Yeah, and we are talking specifically about animal control and coyotes, both for issues, but definitely quality of life and safety issues.
Electric bicycles.
Electric bikes also been in the discussion. So I'm only saying that to reaffirm it, not to say we didn't need your comment. It's nice to get affirmation that we're looking at things you're talking about. Great.
So there's a new piece of legislation that's just passed.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
I think we're all familiar with the open carry that's now been passed with the incident we had, 2 years ago, Mayor? Last April. I know our police department's attuned to this, and there's still challenges, as we say, emergent challenges, but we've got to really pay attention to this because there's going to be a lot of young people who shouldn't have these kinds of things where they could cause great damage, not only reputationally, but also to our residents. So we need to address that.
Golf cart safety.
I think the legal age to drive a golf cart is 6 months now, and I don't know if that suits you all, but that seems to be what we see out there. Yes, sir.
I think we need to, just overall public safety, and I've seen this in the 18 years that I've lived back here on the island, that we kind of have a Jekyll and Hyde attitude, which I don't know how our law enforcement people can understand it, that we hear a lot of complaints that our police are too heavy-handed with residents, but
Not
we
with
need
visitors.
more, but not hard enough on the visitors. And I think we as residents, since there's so many of them in here, need to make a commitment that we don't complain anymore about getting pulled over if you roll through a stop sign or have a brake light out.
Well, my only comment to that is I have 2 older brothers, and they got everything. I got no attention whatsoever. So, yeah, I think we all live in, it's human nature, right? And it is behaviorally tested. We all live in, how did that affect me sort of thing, and we think, well, I got the raw deal, and they got the good one. But I think your point's well made.
The world's changing, and we need to make the commitment that our police need to do what they need to do to protect us.
Well, and thank goodness, again, pointing out the positives, the number of positive comments, particularly from the overwhelming number that were full-time residents here about the police force, I think was very reassuring, because nobody talk about societal changes, what a difficult job to do today. And if you all want to have any applause, I leave that to you. But for our people represented here, it's just, I think it's tremendous what you do. We have 2 of our code enforcement officers and chief.
I guess just a comment to coordinating education. It just seems like the people outside of Isle of Palms have an expectation that can't be met, and that we have to do a better job of communicating to the other people, showing the growth of the number of cars entering and exiting our island. And, you know, that I think Isle of Palms has done a fabulous job with the amount of parking. I've seen it the last couple of weekends. They're parked all the way back to Waterway. So they are walking, and most of the time they're obeying the rules, but I just wonder if we couldn't better educate them, have some public service messages go out.
Understaffing. We need more staff. We need more police. We need more fire. They are working so diligently and so hard, but we need more resources.
So thank you. It's, to have growth, and if you talk about data, if you outline the growth numbers and the growth in staff numbers, and so these are the kinds of things that staff brings to the task force members to help share with them. So again, we try to do responsible recommendations, but very good comments. Paige?
And to that point, we have, I believe, if emergency also comes under safety, right? So we've also now have just hired emergency responders. So we are, I do think the city is diligent, paramedics. So I think they are increasing as we can our staff and responding to some of that.
Yes, the city council approved 6 new positions for the fire department that are meant to be firefighter paramedics. We've hired 3. We're looking for 3 more. So please share the information.
Mary Ann?
I just wanted to build off of her comment in regards to understaffed. I think some of the problems that we have, even regarding like the open carry and all those things, if we were better able to control and enforce, like, if there's a dog bite issue because someone has their dog off leash during, the day during the beach, if someone was able to, like, if we were able to enforce that, or some of the,
Right.
we're not supposed to be drinking on the beach, if, we were able to have more enforcement of those type of things, it could stop something bigger happening.
Thank you very much. So what I'd love to do, respecting time, and I'll bring the microphone to you, so I want to be respectful of your time, is our final issue is a very general category of overall quality of life. But let me get your comments.
Okay, that's great that we have approved 6 spots 3 paramedics hired, but I have a question as to, due to DHEC regulation and medications, are paramedics able to work as paramedics now, today?
So that program is not yet rolled out. Our goal is to roll that out July 1st. Our main goal when we presented this program to City Council last year was to go live June 1st. We're a month behind and working really hard. Chief Oliveris is out in the back, so any questions that anybody has about the firefighter paramedic program, happy to answer that offline.
Sure.
I just had a point to make about helping out our understaffed services. And that is, in some communities, they have see something, say something. Let's raise the vigilance. Let's get a participatory kind of constituency here on the island where if you see something, make sure you report it immediately so that our services can be used effectively. So some kind of program that encourages citizen participation in reporting. And I'm not saying we need tattletales everywhere. I'm saying what we need is people who see something that's not right and report it. Don't just let it go.
Well, just for your own reflection, imagine the success potential of a program like that when you're in a community of people who care so much about their community. Programs like that are often put into neighborhoods where there's a very low acceptance rate for people looking to do that sort of thing. But looking for those kind of lower cost, higher involvement engagement issues can be tremendous. So thank you for that. What I'd love to do, again, respecting time, is just we have a final issue of your top priorities that you would rate on overall quality. These are things that have come through task force discussions as well as the open community survey. So if you'll give your ranking on priority A and B, and then we'll open it up for last open comment section. But this one has a good number of them, so A, B, C, D, E, or F. So if you'll count those. Quality of life, what would be your top priority? If you picked between those up there, A, B, C, D, E, or F, you're saying that's where I would love the task force to spend their time. Which one might you put down? More social events, A, for broader community appeal. B, programs, activities provided by the rec center. C, programs, activities geared for youth. D, better enforcement of short-term rentals. E, enforcement regulations of noise ordinance. Or F, additional attention to animal control, coyote. You'll have just beside that, if you can put the letter that would be your second priority choice. Anyone want to take a wild guess at the most popular answer from the first session? No? A. It was a surprise to me. A was the number one. Animal control ranking up there, I think, is second. So it'll be interesting to compile all of your responses. One group does not make a data point, so we'll see when we compile everyone's together, kind of where that comes out. But again, it helps really serve in limited amount of time for the task force to undertake the issues. Are we really focused on the priority things at hand and addressing those for people? So with those two responses, the other one, which we'll have to do either on note cards, and I really would encourage you write this on a note card to get it. If you have this direct voice to the task force, they're going to be working for another 3 months or so. If you were going to say, here's what I would love, if the task force called me and said, what do you want us to focus on? What advice, suggestions would you give the task force? So if you just simply write at the top, notes for task force, we'll record them under those sessions. I cannot thank you enough for turning to pen and paper in old school style when technology has failed us tonight. It's a very rare thing that technology fails on this, but it has for us tonight, so I thank you for that. We'll give you some time to just think through, write your comments down, and then we'll have open discussion and wrap. if you took of your time to come here this evening because you said, I want this point to get across. And it's maybe on the note card, but you're not going to be happy till you've said it out loud and it's on live record. Or not live record, just record. Anyone have a comment? You'd love to make sure it is on the record. Yes, sir.
I know Mayor Phillip and Rusty will know, believe me, but anytime an elected official in the last 4 years has asked me what our number one issue is on this island, it is the divisiveness in bringing our people together and doing more things to bring our people together. And obviously that answer A, I believe, made me feel really good that I'm not the only one that's saying that.
Thank you. There's a great power in the words that you had. What can be done as a collective voice? What can be done when it's respectful input, when it's input that is studied and measured? It's amazing the progress that can be made. All the solutions will not be out there for sure, and some of them are very costly and very long-term. But having an opportunity to really weigh in and have this group of dedicated volunteers that are working, think about it, 6 months. They're meeting several hours every other month with a lot of work in between the meetings. It's a lot of dedication, so the appreciation for the people that have volunteered in their time. Any other comments, such as Mark's, that you'd like to share? Yes, sir.
I was going to ask about our lobbying activities here. Do we feel it's effective? Are they doing a good job for us? Are they representing the city in a meaningful way? And if so, what is the conduit from the results of what your committee is going to put out? And is it going to get to them on those topics that are specific to the state and how they can help us?
Mayor Desiree, would you like to take it, Desiree?
I can speak to the success we have had over the past several years in obtaining state budget allocations for several projects. We were able to receive a grant for dredging the marina, which is something that the city has in the pipeline the next few years. We've received funding from the state to install more ADA compliant boardwalks on the island. We did one last year. We have 2 more in the pipeline for later this year that we're really excited about. We received funding for stormwater drainage projects. The next one that we have in the queue is the improvements to Palm Boulevard between 38th and 41st. That area, as we all know, always has a lot of standing water after every rain event. We recently completed a drainage project at 41st that was 95% paid for by a state. So they've been very successful in getting the city some funding for very important large projects that we have lined up. In terms of the policy, they also take the mantle that council tells them about the policy issues that are important. Recently, you all know that there's been some efforts from the state at preempting municipalities' ability to regulate short-term rentals. That's an issue that City Council has spoken against and wanting to maintain local authority over those issues, and those are issues that they take up on our behalf up in Columbia. So I think the mayor can speak to that, but we think it's been very effective having dedicated lobbyists representing the city in Columbia.
And the only addition to that, we've only had lobbyists for 2 years. So, a little bit of a runway to make it effective and, get your voice, at the table in the State House. But I think they've been great. Financially, it's been off the charts. I mean, we pay them $50,000 a year, and we probably have had, pick a number, $6 or $5 million come back to us through state. So, financially, easy success rate. Influence is really, where we need to keep pushing that needle a little bit. So again, we just put that in 2 years ago. So we'll keep pushing. Yeah. Yes.
Have you had any discussions with Mayor Amy Mount Pleasant about trying to combine 2 lanes, right range to the bridge?
Mick, I'm sensing this is an issue for you. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Where he does have to be part of the solution to get 2 lanes to Rocky Range Road, and we need to work together as a community, not be like Mark is talking about being at each other's throats all the time about why are you banning parking here, why are you just.
Yeah.
It seems to me that it'd be better for everybody.
Yeah, so you're hey, I'm right here. I'm right here. So your question is our conversation with Mayor Haney fairly regularly. There was my phone's going off last night at 10 o'clock. Laurie's like, "Who are you texting with?" Haney. So there are a lot of conversations. Oh, very much so. His issue. I don't know if he's speaking for council, but their main issue is they've got 2 multi-use paths coming our way and going their way. They don't want to rip up. Why don't you call him, Mick? Yeah, why don't you call him?
Well, all to say borders are tough. Borders are tough. The good thing is looking at the relationships between Eric Demir and Desiree, between Mayor Haney and Mayor Pounds, you've got really good open relationships. That doesn't mean we always get our way, but we've got a great foundation of relationships for discussions to continue. So that's a real benefit thing. I'm sorry, did you have a comment?
Just a recommendation, or just not a recommendation, something that I experienced that I thoroughly enjoyed. I went to Mount Pleasant Town Council to thank the fire department for assisting in the fires that we had on Ocean and Wild Dunes. They have a format that you get 3 minutes, but after they conduct their business, then they open it up again for 3 minutes. There's also 2 councilmen on council that do a recap of meetings on social media and email. And to Mark's point, with the divide of the island, I think having that recap for the people that can't make the 11 o'clock meetings, that all due respect, but the video, watching the old, watching the meetings is not always good or consistent with the sound, the audio. Thank you. I think it would be so great. I think it would make things easier, but if there were a recap and the community knew what was going on through the recap. I know it's our responsibility to watch the meetings, but it just brought a very personal level to it.
Yeah, awesome. That's a great idea. So one of the primary things I try to watch is the clock, never to cut somebody short, but be respectful of the time that we committed to. We also have a group of youth in the room down the hall that have been engaged, and I'm sure at some point they're going to be like, it's time. But all to say, just a final thank you for your input. The polling does seem to be working. I went directly into it, so I entered the word searching, so it came up. I'd love a final thing for you. If you were going to add 1 word, or again, 2 words hyphenated that said, how did you feel about tonight's session? Albeit technology, don't blow us up with that one. We realize it didn't work. But how did you feel about tonight's session? What words would you enter in having forums like this for what we're all heading for, which is the livability and enrichment of the community? We visually may not see it all appear on this squish slide, but it will be in the database and we can generate that for the report afterwards. As we did before, if you have up to 3 words that are on your head, just go ahead and enter in all 3 one at a time. Or if you see a word up there that resonates with you and you want to put emphasis on that word, you may certainly use it again. So we're seeing educational, great start, helpful, grateful, informative, enlightening, constructive. Thank you for that feedback. In a process that we use to make sure as many voices are heard as possible, our job now is to collect and be able to read your handwritings so we can enter in, but it does make it more simple with A, B, C, Ds, and F so we can get your input into the system. But a final thank you. Mayor, do you want to close with any thoughts? But just this is all a very important part of the process.
Yeah, real quick, and really hate the technology didn't work tonight because the interactiveness is really a nice piece to this software. This is probably, Carrie, thank you and your team, this is probably the 6th or 7th session we've had in this room over the last 2 years, looking for feedback, whether it's been the new marina operator, Wild Dunes, on and on. We've had, many opportunities for folks to get engaged and give us feedback on things. So thank you for doing that. And I think it's my mayor's message that may be out now, talking about the community engagement and how many sessions we've had over the last couple of years, and we'll continue to look for those type of opportunities for you to give us feedback. Most of my paycheck goes to the refuge because that's where I do coffee, is one-on-one a lot of times. So if you have a need to just reach out and have a one-on-one, happy to do that too. Office hours, council, myself, staff, everybody's available, so don't hesitate to give us feedback. We very much appreciate it. So we are done. Thank you all again for being here tonight. Appreciate it.